The city did not welcome Unyime. It swallowed her whole and spat her out on the curb of indifference. Her only armor was her name, a whisper of a home she could barely remember, and the fire in her eyes that refused to go out. Lagos was a beast that thrived on dreams, and it had just caught the scent of hers. The morning Unyime left Akwa Ibom for Lagos, the sun had not yet risen. She sat at the back of the rickety interstate bus, her knees pressed against a worn backpack, its zippers barely holding together. The bus stank of sweat, dried plantain peels and exhaustion, a cocktail that mirrored her nerves. She was 17, freshly done with secondary school, and had no idea what would meet her in Nigeria's most unforgiving city. Her uncle had called 2 weeks ago with an offer she couldn't refuse. Come to Lagos. You can help out in my electronics shop, save up for JAM, and maybe start Polytechnic next year. It sounded promising. Her mother's meager fish-smoking business couldn't fund her dreams. Her father had died in an accident when she was 8. All she had left was ambition, and the echoes of old lullabies sung under palm trees. The bus jolted over a pothole, snapping her out of memory. As she looked through the cracked glass window, she realized she was trading one kind of poverty for another, one that came with glitter and teeth. For the rest of the 14-hour journey, she thought of what Lagos might feel like. She pictured wide roads and glass buildings, imagined herself in trousers and lipstick, imagined success. But when she arrived at Jibowu Park, Lagos was not the city in her imagination. It was louder, hotter, and meaner. Hawkers swarmed the bus before it stopped, pressing gala and chilled drinks through the windows, yelling at passengers. Okadas zipped dangerously between cars. Her eyes widened at the chaos. The city didn't wait for anyone. It moved like it didn't care whether you were ready or not. Her uncle, Mr. Eddie, was late. He eventually arrived in a faded Arsenal jersey, reeking of sweat and urgency. "Weddin' day were you? Na so you day stand like moo-moo," he snapped, dragging her bag without waiting for a reply. His greeting was more command than comfort, but she smiled and followed. What choice did she have? That night, she slept in the back room of a tiny electronics shop in Ojulegba, with exposed wires dangling like snakes from the ceiling. The mattress was thin, the fan broken, and the room smelled of hot plastic and frustration. Yet, as she lay staring into the darkness, she whispered to herself, "Unyime, this is where you rise. This is not the end." The next morning began with shouting, "Unyime, you think say na holiday you come?" Her uncle barked from the shop front. She dragged herself out of the room, tied her scarf, and joined him behind the counter. The shop was cramped and overstocked with old chargers, dusty TVs, and suspicious power banks. Mr. Eddie sold fake products with the charm of a seasoned hustler. "Original. Imported," he would yell, pointing to goods he knew were Chinese knockoffs. Her job was simple: arrange shelves, write down sales, and keep quiet. But Lagos was not a place for silence. Each day brought something to fight for: space on the crowded sidewalks, a seat in a danfo, attention from customers, and even air to breathe. Unyime found herself shrinking. The bold girl who had dreamed of Polytechnic faded into the background of shouting traders and fumes. Mr. Eddie took her wages and promises. "Later, I go settle you. Just learn work small first," he said whenever she asked. She couldn't call her mother. There was no airtime, and besides, what would she say? That she now lived in a storage room and worked 12 hours a day for food? But she endured. She made friends with Chinaza, a pepper seller next door, who taught her how to fold 500 Nigerian Naira's notes discreetly into her wrapper for safekeeping. "Lagos will humble you, but you must not let it break you," Chinaza said one night, as they shared puff-puff behind the shop. That sentence became a prayer. Unyime started saving money. She took odd cleaning jobs around the area on Sundays, hiding the money where Mr. Eddie couldn't find it. She counted every Naira like it was a step out of prison. In time, she began dreaming again, not of glass buildings, but of a one-room apartment and a night school diploma. One Saturday, as she mopped the dusty floor of the shop, a customer came in looking for a USB cord. He was different, polite in clean jeans, and asked for her name. "It means joy, right?" He smiled after she replied. "That's a strong name." Her heart fluttered, not from attraction, but from the sound of someone speaking to her like she mattered. That night, she didn't cry herself to sleep. Lagos was a liar. It promised light but gave shadows. It promised opportunity but left Unyime drowning in its overpopulation of dreams. After a month in Ojuelegba, she had stopped expecting the city to care. But she hadn't stopped trying. Each evening after Mr. Eddie closed the shop, she wandered briefly through the side streets, watching the life she wasn't part of. There were girls in bright dresses laughing as if the dust didn't matter, men drinking around street corners with exaggerated confidence, and students in faded uniforms hurrying home with backpacks too small for the burdens they carried. Somewhere in all of it, she began to feel less alone. She hadn't seen the young man from the shop again, but she often thought about how he'd said her name, like it was worth remembering. That simple moment stirred something. The desire to be seen, not just used. But this wasn't a city that saw people like her. She knew that now. One night, her uncle didn't come back to the shop. She waited, worried. It wasn't like him to leave the shop unattended. When she called his line, it rang out twice and then went off. The next morning, a man in dark sunglasses came to the shop before sunrise and knocked loudly. "You be Unyime?" he asked, as if her answer wouldn't matter either way. "Yes," she said hesitantly, eyeing the strange man. "Your Uncle Day inside Kirikiri now. Dem catch am for fake receipt and stolen items." Her blood ran cold. The man handed her a folded paper, a police report with her uncle's name on it, and turned to walk away. "Better close shop. If police come, dem no go here say you be small girl." Unyime stood frozen in front of the metal shutters. Lagos had just reminded her again. Nothing was permanent. Not help, not shelter, not safety. She didn't cry. Instead, she locked the shop and went to Chinaza. "You day alone now," Chinaza said, after hearing everything. "You go need plan sharp before dem blame you join the case." That evening, she wrapped her small belongings into her backpack again, now lighter than ever. Chinaza offered her space in the one room she shared with her cousin, but it was already too crowded. So she did what Lagos girls did when they had no one. She walked to the footbridge at Ojuelegba and watched the neon signs flicker. She stayed there most of the night, head on her back, pretending to be just another person in transit. But in truth, she was now homeless. The days that followed were sharp-edged and cruel. Unyime learned how quickly a city like Lagos could chew through your dignity. Without her uncle's shop, she had no legal footing, no job, and no roof. The street became a temporary shelter, but it came with dangers. Men lingered too long. Boys tried to snatch her bag. One night, a street preacher mistook her for a prostitute and tried to save her with spittle-laced prayers and a hand that lingered too long on her shoulder. She knew she couldn't survive like this. So she turned to the market. Chinaza introduced her to Mama Iridi, a middle-aged woman who ran a Gary stall and needed help lifting bags and watching the shop when she stepped out. It wasn't glamorous, and the pay was just 700 Nigerian nairas a day, but it was survival. Mama Iridi was loud, shrewd, and took no nonsense, but she saw something in Unyime and gave her a chance. "You be village girl, Isabi," she said one morning. "But if you get sense, you go make him hear.
Lagos no dey pity anybody.
You go hustle or you go die." So Unyime hustled. She woke by 5 a.m., stored her bag behind the market stall, washed up in the public toilet, and started work. By noon, her fingers were stained with Gary, and her face burnt from the sun. But the coins added up. Slowly, she started saving again. Every night, she paid 300 Nigerian nairas for a spot on the corridor of an abandoned school building nearby, shared by dozens of other girls in similar circumstances. They weren't friends, just survivors. Some had been in Lagos for years, navigating sex work, petty trading, or low-wage labor. Others were even younger than her, eyes wide and broken. But there was something in the routine that gave her clarity. She was not special, but she was not done. On the 5th day at the market, the young man returned. The one who had once asked for a USB cord and smiled at her name. This time he wore a light blue shirt and had a sling bag over his chest. He looked at her in surprise. "You again?" he asked. "You work here now?" She wiped her hands on her wrapper and smiled carefully. "Just helping out." He introduced himself this time, Fizeo, a student at LASU and freelance app developer. "You ever thought of going back to school?" he asked. "You sound smart." Unyime paused. No one had said that to her in weeks. I think about it every day, she said quietly. He nodded and dug into his bag, bringing out a card. There's a community center in Surulere Techrise. They have free digital classes for girls. It's not much, but it's a start. She stared at the card like it was gold. For the first time since her arrival, Lagos felt less like a punishment and more like a riddle she might one day solve. Surulere was both everything and nothing like Ojulegba. It had less shouting, fewer buses honking in frustration, and more signs of ambition hidden behind rusted gates and modern illusions. Unyime stared at the address on the card for a full minute before pushing open the black iron gate that read Techrise Digital Center, empowering young women through code. Inside, the building was modest, a two-story converted bungalow with mismatched chairs and solar panels patched to the rooftop like a science project. But what struck her was the silence, focused, purposeful, and sharp like a fresh razor. Young women, not much older than she was, sat in front of desktop monitors. Some typed furiously, others whispered to mentors. It was like another world. She was welcomed by a slim woman with locks and glasses who introduced herself as Miss Ronk. You're Unyime, right? Fizeo mentioned you might stop by. Unyime nodded, heart pounding. I don't have a computer. Or money for training. Miss Ronk smiled. This place is for girls like you. We don't charge. What we ask is commitment. If you can show up 4 days a week, we'll teach you. From the beginning. Felt too good to be true. And yet, by the time Unyime left that day, she had filled out a basic form and received a schedule to start classes the following Monday. Introduction to Digital Literacy. Her first step into a future that didn't smell of Gary or fake phone chargers. That night, she sat by the corridor of the abandoned school building, reading a borrowed leaflet about basic coding and digital skills under the flicker of a flashlight app on her cracked technophone. The words were foreign HTML, CSS, keyboard shortcuts, but she read them like they were love letters from a life that still believed in her. She told Chinaza about the program the next morning.
Tekke skiviko.
Chinaza said, raising an eyebrow. Not computer go feed you now? Unyime grinned, unoffended. It might. If not now, then one day. Chinaza laughed, shaking her head. Your craze day always different. But go ahead. Just no forget market O. Mama I ready no day play. So Unyime began to live two lives. Market worker by day, aspiring coder by late afternoon. She rushed from Ojulegba to Surulere on sweaty danfos, clutching her meager transport fare like treasure. She borrowed an old notebook from a girl at the center and scribbled every new word and concept like her life depended on it, because in many ways it did. Miss Ronk noticed her hunger for learning and offered encouragement. You're catching on fast. Ever used a computer before? Unyime smiled shyly. Only once. In SS2. I pressed the wrong button and shut it down. Miss Ronk laughed. Don't worry. You'll press the right one soon. And so, as the city continued its usual madness, buses crashing, boys scamming, people shouting over change, Unyime quietly learned how to build a website. The rhythm of her new life brought both joy and risk. Mama Iridi noticed Unyime slipping away by late afternoon. Where you day always rush go? She asked one Thursday, arms folded, suspicion in her tone. I day attend free class, Unyime said carefully. Computer training.
Mama ireti skofed.
Na book go cook your soup?
ABI na koudin go wash me garri.
If you know serious, I go find another girl. Unyime bowed her head and apologized. But she didn't stop. Every evening at Techrise, she absorbed knowledge like a sponge in a drought. She learned how to type properly, how to use spreadsheets, how to organize files. By the third week, she was building a simple blog using WordPress, sharing fictional stories inspired by her life in the market and her dreams for the future. She called it Joy in the Dust, a nod to her name and her struggle. Fizeo showed up one Thursday to check in. You're really doing this, he said, peeking over her shoulder at the screen. Proud of you. She didn't know what to say, but his words stuck with her. One day after class, she got a message from a woman who had read her blog. The woman was based in Ibadan and worked with a youth storytelling platform. Are you really just 17? The message read. Your voice is powerful. We'd love to republish your story on our site. Unyime stared at her phone, stunned. She didn't reply immediately. The idea of her words reaching beyond Surulere terrified her, but it also thrilled her. She showed the message to Miss Ronk the next day. "That's a big deal," Ronk said, beaming. "You should say yes. But you should also create a proper email address. That techrise2025@gmail you used was okay for registration, but now you need a personal one. Something clean. Something professional." They created one together. Unyime@gmail.com. Felt official. It felt like stepping into a room where people finally wanted to hear her voice. But good things in Lagos always came with a price. Later that evening, when she returned to the market, she found Chinaza waiting for her with a sour expression. "Mama Iridi say make you no come again. She don't like that you're always leaving early. Say you don day for madam." Unyime's chest tightened. "But I still do all the work." "Na Lagos," Chinaza said, shrugging. No space for plenty explanation. Unyime packed her few Gary-stained clothes from behind the stall and walked out with her bag. She had lost the job, but for once she didn't feel defeated. She walked to the bridge, watching the cars pass under the fading sun. In her bag was a card to TechRise, a blog with 4 posts, a new email address, and the email from Ibadan. No money in her pocket. No stall behind her. But also no shame. The city hadn't crushed her. Not yet. With Mama Iridi's stall gone, Unyime's last thread of stability unraveled. Her days at TechRise were now full-time, but her nights became even harder. She no longer had market earnings to cover her 300 Nigerian nairas nightly fee at the abandoned school corridor. The other girls noticed her staying out later, sometimes until the gates were shut. "You dey find trouble if dem catch you sleep outside fence," one of them warned. "Agboro boys no dey pity fine girl." Unyime knew the risks, but what choice did she have? TechRise, however, things were moving faster. Miss Ronk had enrolled her in the beginner coding cohort, and for the first time, Unyime was learning actual programming languages. HTML and CSS were tough but logical. JavaScript made her feel like a magician, typing instructions into black screens and watching her words turn into interactive commands. Her first mini-project was a personal portfolio site. On the landing page, she placed her name boldly, Unyime Bayside Market Girl, Future Developer. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She was documenting herself. Every line of code was a breadcrumb on the trail of survival. By now, her story had been featured on the youth storytelling platform. The repost earned her over 800 views and 5 new messages from girls across Nigeria. One read, "I'm in worry. I hawk oranges in the morning. But I started learning typing. Your blog gave me hope. Thank you, Unyime." She read it over and over again, hand trembling. But hope didn't pay for transport or food. Chinaza helped her occasionally, giving her leftover yam and stew, but Chinaza herself was struggling. There were nights when all Unyime had was bread dipped in water, eaten while hiding from security men patrolling the school compound. One evening, Miss Ronk called her aside after class. "You're bright, but you're falling asleep during code review. Talk to me. What's happening?" Unyime hesitated, shame biting her tongue. I don't have a place to sleep anymore. I'm managing under the school corridor. But I'm still focused." Miss Ronk's expression changed instantly, her usual calm replaced with something sharper. "You should have told me earlier. You can't code if your belly's empty or you're sleeping on concrete. That's not how resilience works." The next day, TechRise gave Unyime a small stipend from their hardship fund. It wasn't much, Nigerian Naira 10,000, but it was enough to get her into a small face-me-face-you room in Mushin. She shared it with 3 other girls, all junior hairdressers. No bed, just mats. But it had a lock, a roof, and most importantly, peace. That night, Unyime laid on the mat, head on her backpack, heart heavy with gratitude. For the first time since arriving in Lagos, she had a key to a room. She turned the key slowly in her fingers like it was a sacred object. She didn't cry. Instead, she opened her phone and began drafting her next blog post. The new routine was lean but manageable. Morning coding classes, afternoon practice sessions, and evening writing. Her blog had now attracted the attention of a small tech community called Nigenext. They sent her a DM, asking if she'd be willing to join a storytelling challenge. Prize: a new laptop and a 50,000 Nigerian Naira scholarship to continue coding. Felt like a trap too good to be true. But Miss Ronk vetted the offer. They're legit. Their founder used to sleep in cybercafes like you. Enter the challenge, Unyime. So she did. The challenge required a 1,000-word story about how digital literacy can transform marginalized youth. Unyime didn't write fiction. She wrote about herself, how she learned to survive Lagos with 1 bag, 2 Gary-stained dresses, and a growing set of HTML tags. She titled the piece Ctrl+Alt+Survive and submitted it with trembling fingers. While waiting for results, she doubled her efforts at the center. She wanted to earn her future before asking it for more. Then came the twist. One Thursday, Fizeo visited the center again. After the usual banter, he pulled her aside. There's a startup I'm interning with. We need someone to assist with content. Nothing deep, just proofreading blog posts and managing the website's admin panel. I pitched your name. Unyime's jaw dropped. But I'm not a graduate. I don't even have a CV. He smiled. Build a simple one. You already have your blog, your projects, and your writing. You've done more than most graduates. Trust me. He left her with the email address of the company, admin@softbench.com. That night, she didn't sleep. Instead, she worked on her CV, with guidance from a YouTube tutorial and notes from Miss Ronk. It wasn't fancy, but it was real. Under experience, she wrote. Blog writer and editor, self-published. Basic HTML/CSS developer, TechRise projects. Informal sales assistant, market trader, Ojalegba. She sent it the next morning, then walked all the way to TechRise. Unable to afford transport, but floating on hope. 3 days later, the reply came. Hello, Unyime. We'd like to invite you for a virtual interview. Kindly confirm your availability. She screamed. The girls in the Mushin room thought something bad had happened. When she explained, one of them clapped and said, "Now like thisy day start. Now small you go blow." But Lagos never allowed joy to rest unchallenged. That same night, her phone, her only link to the outside world, slipped from her lap while charging and hit the floor. The screen went blank. Dead. Unyime stared in silence, then slowly picked it up. All her files, the interview email, her blog drafts, they were now trapped inside a lifeless screen. For a full hour she sat in darkness, the phone on her lap, fighting the panic rising in her throat. Not again. Unyime stared at her dead phone like it was a dying child. No blinking light, no flicker of life. Just a silent slab that now stood between her and everything she'd built. Her blog, her emails, her lifeline to the world. She tried everything. Pressing the power button, shaking it, even placing it under the fan as if cool air could revive it. Nothing. By midnight, she was sitting on the room's edge, trying to breathe through a rising storm of helplessness. The other girls were already asleep, curled up on their mats. One of them had a cracked Infinix, but it was locked and wouldn't help. The interview was virtual. She needed access. She needed a miracle. Morning came with hunger and a pounding headache. She skipped breakfast, there wasn't any, and walked to TechRise an hour early. She waited outside until Miss Ronk arrived. "I need help," she blurted before the woman had even unlocked the gate. One look at her face and Miss Ronk didn't ask questions. Inside, Unyime explained the situation. Ronk sighed. "It happens. Lagos eats electronics faster than it eats food. But we'll fix this. You're not doing this alone anymore." She gave Unyime access to one of the shared center laptops and helped her log into her Gmail. Thankfully, Unyime had synced her files to the cloud the week before. The interview was scheduled for 2 p.m. It was 9 a.m. She had time. "Use the side room," Ronk said, pointing toward a quiet section with a working webcam. "Dress simple. Speak clearly. Be yourself." At 1:58 p.m., Unyime clicked the Zoom link. At 2 p.m., the screen lit up with 3 faces, 2 men and a woman. One of them wore a branded Softbench hoodie. "Hello, Unyime. Thank you for joining. Let's get started." The interview lasted 20 minutes. They asked her about content strategy. She admitted she was learning. They asked her about HTML. She showed them a live preview of her portfolio. They asked her about challenges, and she told them about Gary, concrete, and hunger. She didn't cry. But when they asked her why she wanted the job, her voice softened. "Because I've never had a job that didn't take more from me than it gave." she said. I want to earn with my mind, not just my hands. The call ended. By 3:15 p.m., an email landed in her inbox. We're impressed by your grit and potential. While this is a junior support role, we believe you'll grow fast. We'd like to offer you a 3-month paid internship at 30,000 Nigerian nairas per month, with performance bonuses. Please confirm acceptance. She read it 3 times before standing up. In a daze, she walked to the main hall where other girls were working. I got it, she said quietly. The room erupted into cheers. Even the girls who had barely spoken to her high-fived her. It wasn't just a win for Unyime. It was a win for every girl who'd ever been underestimated. That night, Miss Ronk let her borrow a backup phone until she could fix hers. It was old, but it worked. Unyime used it to post her next blog entry. I built a future out of broken pieces. One screen at a time. The soft-bench internship came with its own kind of pressure. Her tasks seemed small, fixing typos, uploading blog posts, formatting pages, but they had to be perfect. The content team lead, a sharp-tongued woman named Amaka, didn't tolerate sloppy work. Unyime, this is tech, not primary school newsletter, she snapped during her first week. If I catch one more typo in our website footer, I'll code your name into the error log. But Unyime didn't take it personally. She took notes. Every mistake became a lesson. Every criticism a sharpening. Within 2 weeks, she was editing entire blog posts without needing supervision. The dev team even let her test a mobile UI form for bugs, which she approached like an exam. Outside the job, Lagos remained relentless. Rent for the shared Mushin room went up by 1,000 Nigerian nairas unexpectedly. One of the girls had moved out, and the landlord claimed new security expenses. Unyime argued, but he just shrugged. Nah, Lagos be this. You go pay or you go. She paid reluctantly, cutting her data plan down to stretch her stipend. Even with her small income, everything vanished fast. Transport, pad money, soap, data. But she was surviving with dignity now. She bought a second-hand keyboard for 2,000 Nigerian nairas and practiced typing every night. She downloaded free courses, studied SEO basics, and watched videos on how to pitch clients. She no longer wanted just a tech job, she wanted freedom. Fizeo stayed in touch, checking in once a week. You're basically doing a crash course in Lagos tech, he joked. By next year, you'll be mentoring people. Unyime laughed. Next year, I want a mattress first. Then came the most unexpected message yet. A woman from the storytelling platform in Ibadan reached out again. We're starting a podcast series based on youth stories. Would you be open to recording an episode with us? You'll be paid a small honorarium, Nigerian naira 15,000. Nothing big, just your voice telling your story. She said yes. Recording the episode was surreal. She spoke into a borrowed mic in Tekrai's small studio, telling her story as clearly as possible, leaving out names but holding nothing back. From Gary stalls to keyboards, from hunger to HTML, from broken phones to job offers. It aired a week later. The comments section exploded. This girl is a fighter. I feel seen. I've slept on a corridor too. Unyime, you are a phoenix. And then another message. This time from an NGO based in Kenya. They ran digital literacy programs across Africa and were offering fellowships to young girls in tech storytelling. They wanted to nominate her, not as a beneficiary, as a youth ambassador. Her knees nearly gave out. That night, back on her mat in Mushin, she stared at the borrowed phone and whispered aloud, Lagos didn't break me. It sharpened me. Then she drifted off to sleep for the first time in weeks, smiling. Visibility had always been a double-edged sword in Lagos. By the time Unyime's podcast episode hit 10,000 plays across platforms, her inbox began filling with everything from praise to pressure. Girls from Ibadan, Kaduna, even Cotonou sent her long messages about pain, progress, and their own unfinished stories. Some called her Sister Joy. Others begged her for advice on escaping bad jobs or abusive homes. Unyime tried to respond to each one. Took hours. But she knew what silence from someone you admired felt like. So she answered, even when she had nothing to give but words. Meanwhile, the Kenyan NGO moved quickly. They scheduled a Zoom meeting with their regional director, assigned her a mentor, and offered to send her a small tech grant, Nigerian naira 100, $1,000 worth of equipment if she committed to 6 months of outreach blogging for them. Her blog would now reach not just Nigeria, but East Africa. The Mushin room was too noisy to record or write well, so she found a small neighborhood cyber cafe with a quiet backroom and started renting it for 500 Nigerian nairas per hour. She converted it into her unofficial writing den. The owner, Mr. Akin, didn't ask questions, just smiled and called her tech girl. But fame, however small, brought shadows. One day, she received a message from a man who claimed to be a recruiter from a Lagos media company. His profile looked real. He said he loved her blog and wanted her to host a weekly live stream on digital empowerment for young girls. Nigerian Naira 30K per session, he messaged. Plus exposure. You've got the voice. The money sounded tempting. She needed a new phone, and the rent increase had drained her savings again. But when she asked for a contract or call schedule, the man dodged. Instead, he replied with a half-nude photo of himself. Her fingers went cold. It wasn't just offensive. It was a reminder. She might be smart. She might be building. But to some, she would always just be a girl to be used. She blocked him, deleted the thread, reported the account. But the shame sat on her skin like dirt. That night she didn't write. She didn't code. She lay on her mat, heart racing, wondering if survival always had to cost a piece of you. The next day at TechRise she told Miss Ronk. Ronk didn't comfort her with cliches. She gave her a sharp look and said, "You're rising. That makes you a target. But hear me. Don't ever shrink because of cowards who fear your light. You hear me?" Unyime nodded and something steadied inside her. She posted a blog entry that night called "No is also a full sentence" and told the story without naming the man. Within hours, girls flooded the comments. "This happens all the time. Thank you for saying it. Sometimes I hate being a girl in tech. You're brave. We move." Unyime wasn't sure if she felt brave, but she knew she wasn't afraid anymore. Not of them. By mid-month, Softbench increased her stipend by 10,000 Nigerian nairas, citing outstanding effort and precision. It was the first time in her life that excellence directly translated to income. She bought herself a gift, a refurbished Android phone with 4 GB RAM. It wasn't fancy, but it was hers. No more borrowing. No more flickering borrowed screens. She held it in both hands like a prize. On the day she transferred her Google account, she whispered under her breath, "Unyime 2.0. The same week, the NGO from Kenya shipped her grant package. It arrived in a brown box sealed with customs tape and filled with treasures: a new wireless keyboard, headphones, and a portable MiFi device with 3 months data subscription. She nearly cried when she touched the keyboard. "You don't get office now," one of the Mushin roommates said, laughing. "Not only chair remain." Unyime smiled. She wasn't thinking of chairs. She was thinking of girls like Ijeoma in the next street who sold eggs barefoot, and Belikasu from the market who'd once wanted to learn typing. She was thinking about what came after survival. So she started something small, a weekend circle. She printed 5 small flyers and shared them around her neighborhood. "Girls can code 2 free weekend lessons. Just bring yourself." Only 3 girls showed up the first Saturday. They met in the cyber cafe backroom. Unyime taught them how to open Google Docs, how to save files, and how to type without using their thumbs like phone keypads. The girls giggled, made mistakes, and kept trying. By the second week, 6 more came. Mr. Akin didn't even charge her. "Na good thing you dey do," he said. "Teach dem. Who go teach dem if you no do am?" She named the group Code from Dust. It wasn't registered. It had no sponsors. Just her one used laptop, a few chairs, and a dream that had outlived concrete, shame, and starvation. At TechRise, the other girls began calling her Madam Mentor. Fazeo joked, "Next thing now, na TED Talk you go do." She laughed, but inside she wondered, why not? That same week, she received a surprising email. Subject: Unyime, would you speak at our youth panel? From African Future Now Conference. Location: Victoria Island, Lagos. Honorarium: 50,000 Nigerian nairas. Topic: Tech from the Trenches. How the Streets Are Building Africa's Coders. She blinked twice. Victoria Island. The Lagos she once saw only through Damfo windows. Clean suits, air conditioning, real microphones. She read the email 3 more times before forwarding it to Miss Ronk. All Ronk replied was, "We're your strongest rapper, girl. It's your turn to speak." On the morning of the conference, Lagos looked different to Unyime. Maybe it was the way the sun filtered through the cracks of her new blouse, clean, well-ironed, borrowed from one of her coding circle girls. Maybe it was the way the Damfo conductor didn't yell, "Change no day," at her. Or maybe it was because, for once, she was heading toward a part of the city not as a beggar or invisible girl, but as someone with something to say. She had never been to Victoria Island before. It was cleaner, quieter. Like Lagos had exhaled and finally remembered its manners. She stepped into the conference building. A marble lobby with glass elevators and crisp air conditioning. Her heart raced. "Unyime Baysai?" A young usher in a headset asked. "Yes," she replied, holding her backpack tighter. "Please follow me. The panel starts in 45 minutes. You'll be seated between the Google representative and the fintech founder from Kenya." Unyime blinked. She was being seated between tech executives. Her whole life had shifted dimensions. Backstage, she practiced her speech under her breath. She had worked on it all week, tech from the trenches. It wasn't filled with fancy tech jargon. It was filled with truth, about sleeping in corridors, learning HTML under flickering bulbs, and how coding gave her a voice when life tried to silence her. Her palms were sweaty as she stepped onto the stage. The spotlight hit her face. She glanced at the crowd, rows of people in suits, media tags, and laptop bags. Then she spoke. "When I arrived in Lagos, I thought coding was for rich kids with MacBooks and private lessons. I didn't know it was also for girls who sold Gary, girls who slept on concrete, girls who didn't have lunch but had grit." She paused. The hall was silent. "I didn't just learn to code. I learned to survive. And that survival is now my superpower." When she finished, the applause felt like thunder. She didn't know whether to cry or smile, so she did both. Afterward, people lined up to greet her. A woman from MTN offered to sponsor her next coding class. A youth NGO invited her to join their mentorship network. And a man in a gray Agbada, clearly wealthy, said, "You remind me of my daughter. Stay strong, Unyime. You've already started rewriting what it means to be a Nigerian girl." It was surreal. Unyime left the event with a 50,000 Nigerian nairas honorarium, a new power bank gift, and a business card from a woman who said, "When you're ready to launch Code from Dust formally, call me." She rode home in a Bolt ride for the first time in her life, paid for by the conference organizers. She didn't speak during the ride. She just looked out the window at Lagos and whispered, "You didn't break me." But her joy didn't last long, because when she got back to Mushin that night, she found her backpack open. Her roommate, Tolu, was crying. "Unyime, I'm so sorry they broke in." Gone. Her MiFi, her new keyboard, and her 50,000 Nigerian nairas cash reward. All stolen. Lagos again had reminded her. The higher you climb, the more slippery the walls. The theft shook her. For 3 days, Unyime moved through life like a ghost. She attended TechRise classes, but her thoughts were cloudy. She taught her girls at the coding circle, but her voice felt dim. That stolen 50,000 Nigerian nairas was her first real win, her first taste of ease. And just like that, it was gone, stripped away in the same room she once called sanctuary. Tolu apologized over and over. "I didn't know they'd come. I only stepped out to charge my phone." Unyime didn't yell. She couldn't. She had lived too many Lagos tragedies to waste breath on blame. Instead, she turned inward. She spent 2 nights at TechRise, sleeping in a corner with a blanket Miss Ronk gave her. It wasn't just about the money. It was about being robbed of joy. Again. When Miss Ronk found out, she sat beside her and said quietly, "You're not the things they take from you, Unyime. You're what they can't take." "But they did," Unyime muttered. "All of it."
No, Ronk replied.
"You still have your mind, your blog, your story. And believe me, those are the most expensive things you own." Unyime looked at her, tears threatening to rise. That night, instead of crying, she wrote again. A blog post titled, "Things You Can't Steal. You can steal my bag, but not my backbone." You can take my gadgets but not the hands that learn to type with nothing. You can rob me of money, but you cannot rob me of memory, resilience, or code. I am not what you take. I am what I build back. The post went viral. More viral than anything she had ever written. By morning, she had over 2,000 retweets and 500 comments. Girls from all over Africa quoted her lines. Women offered to donate. Some sent her airtime. Others sent small money. One reader, a digital nomad in South Africa, wired her 75,000 Nigerian nairas with a note. For your next rebuild. Keep going. Her phone buzzed endlessly. Then another surprise. An email from a Lagos tech brand, Byterise Africa, offering her a short-term gig to help script a digital campaign on girls in coding. 120,000 Nigerian nairas for 1 month of part-time work. She sat in TechRise's hallway, reading the email over and over until her eyes blurred. Then she put her head in her hands and exhaled the pain. She didn't celebrate loudly. She didn't jump or scream. She simply whispered, "Let's rebuild again." The Byterise Africa contract transformed everything. With her new gig scripting digital content for their Girls Who Code campaign, Unyime stepped out of being just a survivor and into the role of a professional. Her first assignment was simple: script 3 one-minute videos for social media, highlighting the journey of girls in grassroots tech spaces. She wrote them in one night, under the hum of the borrowed fan at TechRise, headphones on, eyes sharp. She didn't just write content. She poured her blood into it. One script opened with, "Before I learned to type, I learned to dodge danger. Before I learned to debug, I learned to disappear. But today I'm here. Loud. Visible. Coding." Her project lead at Byterise replied the next day, "Goosebumps. You have the voice we need." The campaign launched within a week. Byterise tagged her as a community collaborator and included her name in the credits. Her first transfer came in the same day, 120,000 Nigerian nairas. This time she didn't store it in a backpack. She opened a real savings account at GT Bank. The woman behind the counter almost laughed when she saw Unyime's occupation line, freelance tech writer. "You're young," she said, handing her the ATM card. "Start smart." Unyime nodded. "That's the plan." She bought a new MiFi, replaced her stolen keyboard, and paid 2 months' rent in advance. Then, with what was left, she did something few people expected. She used 25,000 Nigerian nairas to register Code from Dust, officially as a youth micro-initiative. Miss Ronk, overwhelmed, hugged her tight. "You've started something now. You know that, right?" Unyime smiled. "I'm tired of girls like me having to beg for space. If Lagos won't give it to us, we'll build our own." That weekend, her Saturday coding circle swelled to 12 girls. Some came with siblings. Others brought their friends. Even boys began peeking in through the window, asking if they could just watch small. "Nashi day teach una dis thing?" one asked, shocked. "Small girl like this?" Unyime heard him and laughed. Small girl, big code. That night, she stood in the corner of the cafe backroom, arms folded, watching her students type, H1 Hello World, /H1, on shared screens. The hum of fans, the clack of borrowed keyboards, the laughter, it was music. For the first time since she arrived in Lagos, Unyime felt like she didn't just belong. She felt like she led. It had been 5 months since Unyime last spoke to her mother. In the early days, she couldn't afford to call. Later, she had no good news to report. And when the good news came, she was afraid it would sound like bragging, like her mother, still selling smoked fish on firewood stoves in Akwa Ibom, wouldn't understand this strange world of laptops, podcasts, and tech conferences. But now she had no more excuses. She sent airtime to her mother's line. Then she sat on the bench outside TechRise, her heart pounding, and dialed. It rang once, twice, then a click. "Hello? Unyime." She froze. The sound of her mother's voice almost undid her. "Mummy. My daughter. Is it really you?" Tears threatened. Her throat closed. "I'm okay now, Mummy. I've been working. I'm learning computer. Writing. They even paid me." Silence. Then, "I've been praying for you every day." Unyime let the tears fall freely. She told her mother about TechRise, Byterise, and the coding circle. She left out the hunger, the broken phones, the corridor nights. Her mother didn't need that pain. She had carried enough already. Her mother listened quietly. I knew you would be great. I just didn't know it would come like this. They ended the call with a promise to speak weekly. After the call, Unyime walked back into the center and opened a new Google Doc. She titled it, A Tech Guide for Market Girls. Miss Ronk saw the screen and raised her brow. That's a bold title. I want them to know it's possible, Unyime said. That you don't need to escape where you're from to matter. Ronk smiled. Then write it. And we'll publish it. That week, Unyime launched her new series, bite-sized blog posts explaining tech concepts in street language, what HTML meant in market terms, how typing was like grinding pepper fast, how uploading was like sending a message to the village through someone going home. It was a hit. Even her students shared it. Even their mothers began reading it. And somewhere deep inside, Unyime knew. This was no longer just survival. This was legacy. Unyime was no longer just another girl in a crowded city. She was becoming a name. 2 national newspapers featured her digital series, A Tech Guide for Market Girls. ByteRise promoted her blog in their Youth Innovation Digest. TechRise doubled her hours and offered her a junior facilitator role with a monthly stipend, Nigerian Naira 40,000, paid directly into her new account. For the first time, Unyime had 3 income streams, freelance gigs, the NGO blogging grant, and the new facilitation job. She should have been thrilled. But the attention came with pressure. Everyone expected more. More blog posts. More students. More Instagram updates. More stories about triumph. But not everyone wanted to hear about her hard days. The mornings she woke up too tired to speak, or the nights she cried because she felt like a fraud. She was teaching digital literacy, but still struggling to afford a proper laptop. She was telling girls to code like queens, while still using cyber cafe hours when the TechRise lab was full. And then came the email. Subject: Lagos Tech Awards 2025, Youth Champion Nomination. Dear Unyime Abesai, you have been nominated for the Lagos Tech Youth Impact Award in recognition of your work with grassroots digital education and content creation. The ceremony holds next month at Civic Center 6. She read the message 3 times, then sat back in the borrowed office chair at TechRise. Nominated? For an award? She forwarded it to Miss Ronk. Ronk called her immediately. You deserve this, Unyime. I hope you know that. But the voice in her head wasn't so kind. You? Award? You the corridor girl? They don't know everything. If they did, they'd laugh. The imposter syndrome hit hard. That night she didn't write. She didn't teach. She stayed under the covers, scrolling through photos of last year's winners, graduates, app developers, NGO founders. She was just her, a fish seller's daughter with a blog and a few borrowed laptops. But by morning, she remembered her own words, the ones she told others. You don't have to be perfect, just present. She picked up her pen, and she wrote a new post. When you don't feel worthy, show up anyway. It wasn't her most poetic, but it was real, raw, and it struck a nerve. In preparation for the award night, ByteRise sent her a gift. A voucher for 15,000 Nigerian Nairas and a tailor's contact who worked with young professionals. You've got to look the part, their HR manager texted. You're not a backup dancer in this story, Unyime. You're the lead. The tailor, an elderly Igbo man named Ozo, welcomed her into his small Yaba workshop. Ah, you be that girl way dem talk for radio ABI? Come make I so you one correct senator wear. Tech no mean you no go fine. She laughed, easing into the seat as he measured her shoulders. They chose a simple navy blue blazer and matching high-waist trousers. Not too loud, she said. Just strong. You go look like Minister of Coding, he joked. As the award ceremony approached, the buzz grew. TechRise posted a tribute on Instagram. Her students wrote "Good luck onto you" on handmade paper signs. Fazeo sent her an audio message. Win or not, you've already changed the game. Just walk in there like you built the building. But beneath it all, something began to pull at her. That morning she received a call from home. Her younger brother, Iniobong, had fallen from a palm tree while fetching fruit. He broke his arm. They needed 18,000 Nigerian Nairas for a local hospital cast. Her chest tightened. The hospital wouldn't wait for award shows or storytelling grants. Without hesitation, she transferred 20,000 Nigerian nairas from her savings. She didn't think. She just acted. Later that evening, in her almost finished award night outfit, she looked in the mirror. Here was a girl in tailored clothes, invited to Civic Center, recognized as a tech educator, and yet still tied to a small village where boys climb trees to fetch what the house cannot buy. Two worlds. One girl. When she stepped out that night, the city lights felt different. And so did she. Victoria Island shimmered like a different planet that night. Glass towers gleamed under streetlights, SUVs purred along perfect roads, and polished marble floors echoed with expensive shoes. But Unyime walked through it all in her navy blue blazer, head high, heels clicking softly, like she belonged. The Civic Center doors opened into a hall soaked in gold lighting and elegance. Every chair had a branded gift bag. Every table was adorned with tablets, flower arrangements, and bottled water that cost more than some people's dinner. She felt eyes on her. Some curious, some respectful, some confused. Unyime Baysai wasn't the typical guest here. She didn't come with a team or a stylist. She didn't have a social media manager. She came with her truth and a confidence sewn out of dust and data plans. Bite-Rise staff waved her over to their table. Fazeo was there too, suited, proud, beaming like a brother at a graduation. "You look like the CEO of Lagos," he whispered. She laughed, nervous but warm. Maybe one day. The ceremony began. Videos played. Tech founders gave speeches. Hosts with clipped accents cracked dry jokes. When it was time for the Youth Impact Award, her stomach flipped. They called 4 names. The host paused, envelope in hand, then smiled. "And the Lagos Tech 2025 Youth Champion of the Year is Unyime Baysai." Didn't feel real. People clapped. Cameras flashed. She stood up slowly, legs shaking, and walked to the stage. The spotlight blinded her. The mic waited. Her voice had to follow. 5 years ago, I couldn't afford a phone. 3 years ago, I slept under a bridge. 1 year ago, I was still borrowing keyboards. Tonight I stand here because someone gave me Wi-Fi, a word of hope and space to learn. That's all a girl really needs. That. And the courage to stay when the city tells you to leave. Applause. Loud. Then louder. As she walked off the stage, someone handed her the glass plaque. Another handed her an envelope. Nigerian Naira 200,000 honorarium. She smiled. Not because of the money, not even because of the win, but because her name was now etched in a room that once would have closed its doors on her. And she had walked in, not as a guest, but as a name on the program. Fame in Lagos fades as quickly as a Danfo's fuel. The next morning, Unyime woke up in Mushin to the smell of burnt beans, and someone arguing over a bucket of water. Her award plaque rested on her mat, still in its velvet box. It looked out of place beside her dented metal bucket and half-used Vaseline jar. She checked her phone. Her name was trending in small tech circles. From dust to digital, Unyime's rise, corridor girl turned code queen. But in her bank app, the 200,000 Nigerian nairas sat quietly. Real. Needed. First, she sent 50,000 Nigerian nairas to her mother. Another 20,000 Nigerian nairas to her younger brother for medicine and school prep. She paid 3 months of rent in advance and bought her own small rechargeable fan. Then came silence. No more texts. No job offers. No fresh contracts. 2 days later, she was back at TechRise, mentoring a new batch of girls. One of them asked, "Auntie, you don't win award. Why you still day teach?" Unyime smiled. "Because the award is a thank you, but teaching is a calling." Still, she couldn't ignore reality. Her Bite-Rise contract had ended. The NGO grant was wrapping up. The applause had ended, but hunger didn't. She needed a new plan. So she applied for 3 gigs in one day. 1. A part-time UX writing role with a startup in Yaba. 2. A curriculum consultant role for a nonprofit coding bootcamp. 3. A content creator spot with a digital bank. She tailored each CV. She referenced her blog. She attached her Civic Center photo where she looked strong but soft.
Naughty place.
For a week. Then 2. She started doubting again. Maybe the award was her peak. Maybe this was it. Maybe Lagos had clapped, then moved on, as it always does. One afternoon, as she was about to shut her laptop in frustration, she got a call. An international number. "Hello," she said cautiously. Am I speaking with Unyime Baysai? This is Nia from Girls Tech Global, based in Nairobi. We came across your podcast and blog. We're putting together a team of young African voices for a digital inclusion documentary. We'd love you to be part of it and co-write the script. Unyime froze. "Are you interested?" Her voice, small but certain, replied, "Yes. Yes, I am." The city had paused, but the world was listening now. The call from Girls Tech Global shifted something in her. It was the first time an opportunity came without begging, without pitching, without chasing it like water in the desert. And it wasn't just a small project. It was a documentary series highlighting the digital rise of African girls, shot across 5 countries. They wanted Unyime to script the Nigerian segment, appear on camera, and help coordinate interviews with other grassroots learners. They sent her a sample contract, $700 upfront, plus $300 in transport and logistics reimbursements. Her hands trembled as she signed. Girls Tech Global shipped her a microphone, ring light, and camera phone within a week. Their Lagos-based fixer, an easygoing woman named Talani, came to Mushin to meet her, took one look at the neighborhood and said, "Wow, you're really doing this from here." Unyime smiled. "This is where the story lives." They filmed in 2 locations: the cafe backroom where Code from Dust was born, and the sidewalk where she used to dry her socks in the sun. She even insisted they record a scene inside the old market where she had first sold Gary with Mama Iriti. First, some vendors complained, "Why you dey film here? Not politics." But when they realized it was for tech, and that their Unyime was now on camera, many cheered. "She carry our dust go abroad, oh," one shouted. "Now global girl now." Unyime laughed. The same Ojalegba that once treated her like a burden was now her backdrop. This time, she was not begging the city to make space. She was documenting it. She interviewed girls from her own coding group. Fizeo helped edit the first draft of the voiceover script. When she watched the final cut weeks later, she cried. Not out of sadness, but because, for the first time, she saw herself not as a struggler, but as a voice. "I used to think you had to escape your past to grow," she said in the closing scene. "But maybe you just have to speak from it." By the time the documentary went live on Girls Tech Global's YouTube channel, it had 50,000 views in 3 days. Articles were published. Tweets were shared. DMs flooded her inbox again. But along with support came scrutiny. A Twitter user, anonymous, faceless, posted a screenshot of her civic center speech and captioned it, "This girl dey claim sufferhead too much. Abi she go school or she be motivational actress. Everyone want trend off poverty now." Got retweeted. A few people laughed. Some said she was exaggerating her story, that she was just packaging like everyone else in Lagos. It hurt more than she expected. "I shared my truth," she whispered to no one. Miss Ronk, ever sharp, texted her immediately. "Don't waste your fuel explaining your fire to people who've only ever lived in the sun." But it was deeper than trolls. Her younger brother called. "Mummy say make you rest small. People from church day talk say you 2 day expose family." Unyime's stomach sank. Her visibility, while earned, was starting to feel like a weight. She didn't sleep that night. She wondered if maybe she had shared too much. If maybe Lagos had hardened her to the point of performance. If the pride in her mother's voice had slowly twisted into fear. Fear that her daughter's name was now currency in places she couldn't reach. And yet, what was she supposed to do? Shrink? Lie? Pretend her journey was cleaner than it was? No. She opened her laptop. Started a new post. "Truth is not always comfortable, but it is always mine. Maybe you don't believe me. Maybe you never will. But I will still speak. Because a girl who survives this city owes nothing to silence." She hit publish. And waited. By morning, the backlash had quieted. The fans returned. The views climbed. But more importantly, so did her peace. Because Unyime finally understood something Lagos had tried to teach her all along. Visibility is power. But truth is armor. And she had both now. The morning after her blog post went viral again, Unyime sat quietly at the edge of the cafe backroom, watching the cursor blink on her screen. Her inbox had 6 new partnership requests, 3 podcast invitations, and 1 DM from a fashion brand wanting her to model in techie chic for a youth empowerment campaign. On paper, she was flying, but inside she was exhausted. Not physically. Her body had adapted to the Lagos hustle, but spiritually. She hadn't had a real laugh in days. She hadn't heard her mother's voice in over a week. Even her students were sensing it. One of them, a sharp-tongued girl named Deborah, said during class, "Auntie, your smile don reduce. Lagos don tire you small." Unyime smiled faintly. "No, baby. Just coding too much." It was a lie. The truth was she missed simplicity. She missed waking up without needing to post, reply, or represent anyone. She missed Chinaza, who had quietly moved to Benin weeks ago after her own hustle fell apart. She missed the innocence of writing without being measured. Then the call came. It was her mother. But this time her voice was different. Shaky, heavy. "Unyime, I didn't want to disturb you, but it's your Uncle Eshin. He collapsed in the night. He's in the general hospital. They say stroke." Unyime's heart froze. Uncle Eshin. The one who helped raise her after her father died. The one who taught her how to sharpen a blade and check for fake Naira notes. The one who gave her the 500 Nigerian Nairas that paid for her first school uniform. "Mummy, how bad?" "They say he can't speak well. They want to transfer him, but we don't have the money." The doctor said 150,000 Nigerian Nairas for tests and meds. Unyime checked her account before the call even ended. 98,200 Nigerian Nairas. That was it. She just paid for new coding resources and booked a slot at a youth summit in Ibadan. Her next contract payment was still 2 weeks away. For the first time in months, she did not have enough. And for the first time in months, that felt like failure. She sat on her bed, no longer a mat but a borrowed foam mattress, and stared at her account balance. 98,200 Nigerian Nairas. The hospital needed more. Her options were few. She could post her GoFundMe link again, but that felt like begging. She could message the Bite-Rise team, but they'd already sent her a bonus last month. She could call the documentary folks, but they were on break for the season. Then she remembered the girl from Kenya, Zina. They had bonded during the Girls Tech Project, 2 girls from different coasts of Africa, united by Wi-Fi and war stories. Zina had once told her, "If you ever need to talk, not for content but as a person, call me." So she did. And when she explained, voice trembling, Zina didn't flinch. She didn't send pity. She sent 120,000 Nigerian Nairas. "I know you'll pay me back," Zina said. "But that's not why I'm doing it. You reminded me I could rise from my own fire. This is just my thank you." Unyime cried quietly while staring at the alert. She made the transfer to the hospital immediately. Then she messaged her mother. "It's done. Let them move him. He'll be okay." For a full day she did nothing.
No tweets.
No posts.
No interviews.
She just sat, letting herself be a girl with pain. Later that week she walked to the bridge in Ojulegba, not for content, not for drama, but just to feel where it all started. She stood there, watching the sunset fade over yellow buses and plantain carts, and whispered to the wind, "Thank you for not letting me drown." Then she took out her phone and typed a new post. "To every girl who feels like she's one crisis from collapse. You're not alone. Sometimes you give from a cup that's barely full. Sometimes you rise while cracking quietly. But every time you stay, every time you choose to show up, you win. Even if the world doesn't clap, I do." It became her most shared post ever. Not because it was polished, but because it was true. Uncle Eshin stabilized. The doctor said it would be a long recovery, but he was speaking in full sentences again, slowly but clearly. Unyime's mother called every other day with updates, and each time, the relief in her voice made Unyime feel rich. But Lagos was not a city that let you breathe for too long. At TechRise there was news. Miss Ronk had accepted a global fellowship in Cape Town. She would be leaving in 2 months, and the board was considering Unyime to take over as the interim youth coordinator. "Only if you want it," Ronk said privately. "You don't owe us anything." Unyime stared at her. The job would mean steady pay, influence, and her own seat at the table. But it would also mean less writing, less time for personal growth, and far more responsibility. Can I think about it? She asked. Of course, Ronk replied, smiling. But remember, you don't have to become me. You just have to become the most honest version of you. At the same time, Girls Tech Global emailed again. They were launching a new Africa-wide fellowship. A 6-month, paid remote program that would take her to Ghana and Rwanda for field interviews and live training sessions. Only 5 girls across the continent were invited. Unyime was one of them. The choice hit hard. Stay and lead at TechRise, the place that raised her. Or go and rise on a continental level, the place her dreams now reached for. She didn't sleep for days. She spoke to Fizeo. He said, if this were a script, what would the main character do? She spoke to her mother. Her mother said, you know my heart. But I won't tie your wings. She walked alone to Ojulegba Bridge one last time. She remembered the first night she slept nearby, guarding her bag and her pride. She remembered the hunger, the silence, the smell of diesel and roasted plantain. And then she thought of all the girls watching her now, waiting, wondering what kind of permission her decision would give them. She opened her notebook. She didn't write a blog. She wrote a resignation letter. And then she sent her acceptance email to Girls Tech Global. The TechRise farewell ceremony was simple, just how Unyime liked it.
No sweets.
No press. Just the students, the staff, and a few friends. They called it send-off for Auntie U, and decorated the learning room with hand-cut cardboard letters and printed screenshots of her blog posts. Deborah, her sharpest student, gave a short speech. She didn't teach us coding like we were poor. She taught us like we were queens. Unyime held back tears. She gave each girl a flash drive, preloaded with digital tools and ebooks she personally compiled. She handed Shanaza's old apron, now signed by every student, to the youngest girl in the group. You're the next fire starter, she whispered. Then came the final surprise. Miss Ronk handed her a sealed envelope. Inside, 250,000 Nigerian nairas. A gift from the TechRise board. Not salary. Not a bribe, Ronk said. Just a thank you, for walking so others could run. Unyime hugged her for a long time. That night, she didn't go back to Mushin. She booked a hotel room in Yaba. Nothing fancy, just clean and quiet, and sat on the balcony, watching the lights blink across the mainland. She ordered jollof rice, soft drinks, and a slice of cake, her first celebration meal since arriving in Lagos. She thought about everything. The bus that brought her from Akwa Ibom. The first charger she sold in Mr. Eddie's shop. The blog post that turned her voice into currency. The moments of doubt, hunger, joy, and grit. And as midnight approached, she posted one last entry before her flight. Leaving, but not small. I came to Lagos with dust on my sandals and code in my heart. I leave not as someone who conquered the city, but as someone who survived it, and then chose to build something better. For myself. For the girls after me. For the version of me who still sleeps under bridges and other names. She closed the laptop. And when the sun rose, Unyime boarded her flight one way to Ghana. Eyes wide, back straight, heart open. Not to escape Lagos, but to become everything it tried to teach her to be. Cross smelled different. It wasn't just the cleaner air or the salt from the nearby ocean. It was the silence between things. Even in the bustle of Makola Market or the honking of Tirotras, there was something gentler here. Or maybe Unyime had simply arrived whole this time. Her first few days with Girls Tech Global were overwhelming. The orientation was sleek. Projectors, personalized lanyards, smart tags on every door. The other fellows were brilliant. Leah from Nairobi, who was building an app for deaf students, Kiki from Kigali, who coded in Python like she was born with it, and Adiz from Enugu, who had built her first robot using junk parts from a scrapyard. And then there was Unyime, market girl turned content strategist, with a voice that had grown too big for one city. They listened when she spoke. They laughed at her jokes. They asked her questions like she had the answers. One day during a storytelling workshop, the facilitator asked each fellow, "What moment turned your struggle into mission?" Unyime didn't hesitate. "When my uncle was arrested in Lagos and I had nowhere to sleep. That's when I realized, if I didn't shape my life, someone else would do it for me." The room went quiet. She had told this story before. But this time she was no longer telling it to escape it, she was telling it to own it. As part of the fellowship, she led a documentary shoot in Jamestown, mentoring 5 Ghanaian girls on content creation and personal branding. On the second week, one of them, a shy girl named Mame, came up to her and whispered, "Auntie, I want to write, but I'm afraid I'll sound foolish." Unyime smiled. "I sounded foolish for 2 years, but people listened anyway." She watched Mame walk away, shoulders straighter. That night, Unyime sat alone in her fellowship room and opened a blank document. She typed just 5 words. "Maybe I am becoming home." The final month of the fellowship brought an invitation Unyime hadn't expected. Girls Tech Global had been invited to the African Women in Tech Summit in Kigali, Rwanda. One fellow from the cohort would represent the team as a speaker. Their stories had inspired hundreds, but one name kept surfacing in feedback, articles, and online praise. Unyime Baysai. First she thought it was a mistake. "Kiki is the robotics girl," she told the team. "Leah has more field projects." But their reply was simple. "Unyime, your story is the field project." So once again she packed her now better suitcase and flew, this time not as a Lagos girl clawing for breath, but as a continental voice. Rwanda was breathtaking. Lakes like mirrors, hills like prayers. The summit hall was massive, with curved glass walls and digital name displays on the tables. Her panel? The Code of Resilience. Tech voices from the margins. Her co-panelists included a South African AI specialist, a Tunisian blockchain developer, and a Ghanaian tech journalist. When it was her turn, the moderator asked, "Unyime, how did you go from surviving Lagos to shaping digital inclusion for girls across Africa?" She paused. "I stopped apologizing for where I came from." And then she told the story again. But this time, she included the parts she'd often left out. The fear of failure, the almost assault at the school corridor, the shame of her mother thinking she was becoming too big, the DM that almost broke her, and the day her phone died before her first interview. The audience didn't clap until she was done. And when they did, it wasn't just loud, it was long. Later that night, alone in her hotel room, Unyime received a message on WhatsApp. It was from Deborah, her old student in Mushin. "Auntie you, I just passed my HTML test. They picked me for the free dev class. Because of you. I'm doing it." She sat on the bed, tears running down her cheeks. She had left Nigeria, but Nigeria had not left her. It lived in the girls rising behind her. In every line of code written by someone who once doubted their mind. In every whisper that grew into a roar. She posted one line on her blog that night. "Even when I go far, I am still coming home." Unyime returned to Nigeria 5 days after the summit in Kigali. Not to Lagos but to Ikeda Baysai, her hometown. She hadn't seen her mother in nearly a year. The red dust roads, the faded zinc rooftops, the smell of pepper soup in the air. It was like time slowed down for her return. Yet, she wasn't the same girl who had left. She wore simple jeans and a tucked-in shirt. But the way she walked, firm with memory and purpose, turned heads. Children whispered her name. Women watched her pass with soft smiles. The tech girl had come home. Her mother hugged her so tightly it hurt. "Unyime, my child. You are light now. Even your skin days shine." They sat outside under the mango tree as the sun dipped low. Her mother brought out a worn photo album, flipping to pages Unyime barely remembered. Her father holding her as a toddler, her in her first school uniform, her uncle before age weighed down his eyes. "Mama," Unyime said, "I want to build something here." Her mother looked at her. "What kind of thing?" "A small tech hub. Just one room. Solar-powered. Laptops, Wi-Fi, and a blackboard. I'll call it Code from Dus Village Branch. Not everyone has to run to Lagos." Her mother said nothing for a moment. Then she touched Unyime's arm gently. "Do it. Let this town see what it gave the world." Over the next week, she met with the village head, 2 retired teachers, and a carpenter. She used part of her fellowship savings, Nigerian Naira 200,000, to secure a plot beside the local community center. It wasn't much, but it was something. Before she left, she held a mini workshop under the mango tree with 7 secondary school girls. They had never touched a laptop before. She showed them how to open Microsoft Word, When they typed their names and saw them appear on the screen, they gasped. One girl whispered, "Can the computer know who I am?" Unyime smiled. "It already does." Back in Lagos, the city hadn't changed. The buses still shouted. The air still buzzed with hustle. But something had shifted in Unyime. She no longer walked like someone dodging failure. She walked like someone planting flags. BiteRise invited her to speak on a panel about tech in underserved communities. TechRise reopened talks about long-term collaboration. Girls Tech Global offered her a hybrid role to lead storytelling workshops across West Africa. But Unyime didn't say yes to everything. She picked projects that aligned with her core mission. Access over applause. She now had an assistant, a consistent stipend, her own website, and most importantly, her own boundaries. One day, she visited the cafe where it all started. Mr. Akin was still there. "You turned celebrity," he teased. "We still get your old flyer inside." Unyime laughed and handed him a new one, slick, laminated, with the Code from Dust logo in bold. "You were the first one who let me teach," she said. "I won't forget that." Before she left, he stopped her and handed her a wrapped package. No surprise. She opened it at home. It was her old, broken technophone, screen still cracked, battery swollen, but framed in wood with a plaque beneath it that read, "From dust she coded, and then she conquered." Unyime didn't cry. She just placed it beside her award plaques, her laptop, and a folded handwritten list from her students titled, 10 Things We Love About Auntie You. That night, she wrote one final blog post for the journey. "Joy in the Dust," final entry. "I came to this city with my name and my backbone. I leave this story not because it's ended, but because the girl who began it has become someone else. Lagos broke me, then taught me how to rebuild. Not just systems, but souls. I no longer run. I root. I rise. And wherever you are, if you're reading this, know, you are allowed to bloom in broken places. Dust does not mean death. It means you're planted." She hit publish, closed her laptop, and stepped out into the city that once swallowed her. This time she swallowed it back.